When I went to Ghana, I truly felt that was the first time I felt like a black, just a black man.
Yeah.
I'm not a black man who's a threat.
Yeah.
I'm not a black man that is ghetto because he's wearing a do-rag.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a black man that's uneducated.
Yep.
I'm not a black man that's trying to rob you.
Yep.
I'm just a black man.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the podcast. I started this podcast as a way to help black men in all aspects of our lives. Studies show on average we lose 2.8 years of our life when we're under heavy stress. And I think we can gain those 2.8 years back if we express ourselves healthily. Stick with me as I interview therapists, doctors, advocates, activists, and friends about how we can be better as black men and as a black community. If you're not subscribed to us on YouTube and following us on Instagram and TikTok, you'll definitely want to do that. Without further ado, let's get into the episode.
We are back. We are back with another episode. We are here with my brother Jelani. Jelani, you do a lot of dope stuff for the black community.
Appreciate you.
You are the founder of Blackman Hike. Black men or black man?
Men.
Men. Okay,
Yep,
Blackman Hike.
Yep.
Can you explain what it is that you do with Blackman Hike, and why that work is so impactful in the first place?
So Blackman Hike is an organization that I created back in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, it was just going through my own mental wellness struggles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was something that moving. So I'm actually from Akron, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up, being out in nature really wasn't a thing, right?
Right.
Met my wife. We moved to LA. She's nature, animals. That's her thing.
Mm-hmm.
Dragged me outside.
Mm-hmm.
And as I started to hike, man, I just honestly, it felt like it was doing something to me, bro.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt recharged. I felt like I was healing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward to 2019, I had my first like panic attack, man. And essentially, man, I thought I was going crazy. And that was really when I tapped in and said, you know what, I got to focus on my mental health.
Right.
So kind of starting from there, I hit up my homies like, yo, let's intentionally get out in nature as a group. And it was just 5 of us.
Right.
And through 2019 to now, we've grown to having about 70, 80 brothers a month come out. We've got a youth program because we want to get young black boys out into nature, used as an outlet. We're working on a mental health program together. So I'm excited about that. And we also do community events just to, get us black folks together and just commune. So for me, Blackman Hike is just an opportunity to really use nature as a catalyst for mental wellness, physical wellness, and social, well-being as well.
No, absolutely.
All the things that we need as black men.
I love that, bro. I want to talk about the panic attack because I feel like that was a pivotal moment for you, bro. And I feel like that often happens for us. We'll go through something as black men, then we're like, all right, you know what? Maybe I need to actually.
For sure.
So take me through that experience. What was that like? And have you had a panic attack since then? Is that like a common thing that's happened? Like what did that feel like and what brought that on, I guess?
Man, I've gone through stress in my life before, just with a lot of the stuff I'm involved with. But I think for me, it was just the buildup of everything, right? Like moving from, Ohio to LA and where it's expensive. And it's a place where you make it or you don't, right?
Right.
So having that sense of responsibility, like financial well-being,
right.
Just struggles like, I work in a pretty labor-intensive field,
right,
like from the 9-to-5 perspective. So it was just adding work, finances. At that time, me and my wife were in a pretty good place, but we were kind of having some struggles as well.
Right.
I actually had a homie that came out and was trying to not use me, but come out and utilize our time as a breather for him. And what was crazy is we ended up actually driving from LA to Oakland. And we got to Oakland, sat down, was chilling with one of my line brothers, and we were watching a movie and I started laughing, right? And it's crazy how it started. I just started laughing and then it became anxiety and then it became something else. And all I remember was that it was like 1,000 thoughts going through my mind at one time. And I literally, even at that time, which was crazy, I'm like, man, I'm laying down my wife. Like I'm laying down my family. And which is also just adding more pressure to me. And my brother that was there to, really commune, he and my line brother both kind of helped me out of that situation, called my wife and kind of walked me out of that situation. But for me, I never felt like that before. And I never wanted to feel like that before, man.
Yeah.
So it was at a point where I was like, I got to do something. And then, 2 weeks later, I had a therapist. First time I had a personal therapist. And then that's when I really took Blackman Hike as an initiative to use nature for my mental well-being.
Man, wow, that's powerful, bro. I want to ask you, what did they do? Because there's some people that have been around black men or around black men right now that may be having panic attacks, or unfortunately in the future, they'll be around a black man that's having a panic attack. What did your friends do in that moment that helped you? And like, why do you think it helped to pull you out of that?
Oh, man, I think it was, they really were there to comfort me, right? Honestly, the way it happened, at first they were like, bruh, like, stop playing around, right?
Right.
But then they saw that it was getting serious, right? And it goes from a place of like, he's messing around, to concern, to comfort, right? And I think what helped me get through that was those three comfortable voices, right?
Okay.
Having them kind of talk me through it, and kind of hearing my wife's voice through the phone. That really helped me. So what I would say is, in that situation, comforting somebody, being there for them, and really trying to help them process was really helpful for me.
Dope.
Yeah, for sure.
And like, you're talking about a panic attack. You explained a little bit about your thought process and how you got in there. I want people to really get a vivid image of what it looks like so that they can really spot it if they see it. So can you take me through, if you're comfortable, bro?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing in that moment? What are you saying in that moment? Like, and then like, how are you feeling?
Again, I remember laughing, right? And it was just something that was kind of funny, but I was just laughing. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, bro, chill out, chill out. And then I just remember a switch. And then when I say 1,000 thoughts, like, what I thought was like, sometimes you see, folks who are less fortunate that might be on the street, that might not have, mental health support, right? And you see them talking to themselves, and you see them with episodes, right? That's how I felt, right? And I honestly felt like I was gonna be that guy on the street, to be honest. It was every single thought, whether it was what was going on in life, what I should have done in life, what I'm doing now, the stresses. It was just literally thought after thought, and my mind couldn't keep up. And it just got to a point I was breathing heavy. I was crying. I was emotional, so many different emotions. And then going back to, like, I just felt like a sense of disappointment as well, right? It was like, man, I've worked so hard in my life to get to where I'm at, and I have so much more I want to do. And now I'm in a situation where I might not be able to accomplish that, right? So I just felt like I was laying down my family, my wife, like everybody, right? Like, so for me, it was just a moment of like constant thoughts, and not being able to control them, not being able to control your emotions, not being able really to control your body. I remember being on the floor, like
curled up.
Yeah, curled up. And
Damn.
if it wasn't for them comforting me and getting me to that point where I kind of just got me to a comfortable place where I kind of like dozed off.
Right.
And then my body and mind was able to kind of
Reset.
reset. But even after that point, I felt like I was very sensitive, like to stress. Like, I felt like I was on the verge of like happening again. Right?
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, yeah, I can't let this happen again. Right. I felt like it was a blessing that I got through that.
Yeah.
Because I really thought it was kind of like over for me.
Right.
In regard to my mental like capacity. And yeah.
Man, I'm so glad you're able to speak openly about this, bro, because I was just talking to Ariane.
For sure.
What she was saying is Ariane, she's a psychotherapist. She works with entrepreneurs that deal with stress and all that kind of stuff. She was mentioning how a lot of Black men have panic attacks.
Yeah.
And then you come and now you're sitting down, you're in the same couch, same chair, and you're mentioning like, yo, I went through actual panic attacks. So it's like coming around full circle for me, bro. Geez, bro. Like I wanted to ask you about what was happening coming into that moment. Like, can you reverse engineer the environment that created the panic attack? You get what I'm saying? Like,
for sure.
Like, I'm not just talking about the day of. I'm talking about like what situations were you going through during that time? I think you kind of spoke to it, but I want you to get a little bit deeper because I want some Black men that may be potentially in those situations to see like, yo, if I don't stop, this is potentially where it could lead. You get what I'm saying?
For sure.
Yeah.
Being in a place like LA, right, where you don't, I was fortunate to kind of get connected with some of my fraternity brothers, but like the folks that you grow up with, your family, like it was just me and my wife, honestly, out there. So sometimes those are outlets, right? Having those, being able to call your homie or like, let's go out for drinks and let's talk about this, that didn't really exist, right? And I was still getting comfortable in that space. I had moved there in 2017, so like 2 years, it kind of goes fast, right? So I just felt like we were doing well, but we were just getting by. And that's like the common theme in LA. It's like you might make the most money that you've made in your life, but you lose your job and within a month, you could be on the street. So I think having that pressure, and then for me at that time I was doing tax consulting. So like my job wasn't necessarily guaranteed. It was based on the client like basis, right? So having that pressure of like, well, if I lose this contract, then it's over, right?
Yeah.
And then like my wife trying to make it in her career, and that pressure, like, well, I want to be able to provide so she can pursue that, right? And seeing her being stressed out, it just kept filling that cup. And then for me, I stay pretty active, and like for me, I try to like. Sometimes I feel like moving fast helps you forget stuff. So I was moving fast. I was doing a lot. And when my fraternity brother, the homie that came out, when he came out, I was already spread thin, right?
Right.
And all I was thinking was like, I want to be here for him, right?
Right.
And I remember we got up at like 4 a.m. I probably had about 2 hours of sleep before then, while dealing with all this stress too.
Right.
Probably had, about 2 monsters driving up. And it's like about an 8 to 10 hour drive, right?
Yeah.
So just kind of pushing through that, kind of hearing him unpack and trying to be there for him.
Yeah.
And just like getting to that place where it's like, I get to Oakland, I sit down, and I think it was just.
Yeah, it was just a combination of so many things.
So for me, I think it was just the stress from responsibility, the stress from finances, and just like feeling like the weight on your world and not really having a lot of folks to be there for you.
Yeah, man. Thank you for breaking that down, bro, because I know there's someone right now that can be able to listen to what you're saying and say, you know what, man, that's me right now. I actually need to make a change a little bit, right? I'm listening to some of the things you're saying, and I'm like, maybe I should do things a little bit different in my life, bro. So I appreciate your vulnerability. And I'm glad that you're in a better space now. You founded Blackman Hike, and that you guys are doing the work, and you've been able to do the work on yourself. So I want to ask you, like, after that panic attack and you started in therapy, like, what are some of the things that you really started to identify as things that you need to change, behaviors that you need to change that help you to grow into the man that you are now?
And you might identify with this, right?
What's
like,
up?
like my father's from Ghana,
Okay,
right?
okay.
And I'm
Yeah,
firstborn, right?
yeah.
So
Let's get it.
it's pressure there, right?
Yeah, there is.
Like you want like your folks want you to succeed, but you also want to be successful to make your parents
Right,
proud, right?
right.
So I think as a young kid and like the bar never being like too high, right?
Right.
Like I programmed myself to like overexert myself, right? And what I realized is like that was a foundational thing, like that, you know, from my upbringing brought me there, right? So a lot of times I would put how I felt, my emotions, or just fatigue, whether it's body, mental, I put that aside for the greater goal, right? Like
Right.
you got to grind it out. As Black people, we do that, right? Like,
Of course.
you got to grind it out to get to the top, right?
Yeah.
But we never really check in with ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I realized, like, okay, I got to step back. I got to create a space where, one, I can decompress.
Mm-hmm.
I need to create a space where, one, I can reflect.
Mm-hmm.
And I do have to find a place where I can just be still. And like,
Right.
for me, like, that was nature, bro. Like, you get out there, if you stop, you hear nothing. You might
Right.
hear, you know, the leaves blow, but for me, that was that place. It gave me an opportunity to decompress. It gave me an opportunity to reflect. And it also gave me an opportunity to just like reevaluate. You know?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure,
bro.
for sure.
And I know you talked about being married, right?
Yeah.
Like, can we talk about the before and the after?
Yeah.
Like of going into therapy, right? Or before you went to therapy,
Yeah.
like what your marriage was like.
Yeah.
To after being in therapy, what your marriage has been like. Has there been a difference? Has there not really been a noticeable difference for you? Or like,
Yeah, for
what
sure.
are some of the if so, then what are some of the differences that you've seen with your marriage?
Man, well, I'll go back to like being a child. Like, so my
Mhm.
parents, you know, my parents are divorced, right? But
Right.
they had a pretty close relationship. So a lot
Mhm.
of folks didn't even realize they were divorced, right?
Really? Okay. Okay.
But and if you ask my sisters the same thing, going through a therapist, going to a family therapist, and my parents trying to work it out, and it just being really just a bad situation, right? Well, it didn't work, obviously, right? Because they got divorced. It just gave us a bad stigma, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
and also like being in a space where that person can't relate to you, doesn't look like you, can't relate to you. I also feel like that contributed to that, right?
Yeah.
So when I started to take this marriage journey, like that's when therapy was reintroduced into my life, right? So from a relationship standpoint, right? And you know, it was through our pastor, right? So it was more of a religious piece to that too. And that was helpful. Me and my wife, we have a very similar personality. Like we're both Leos, right?
Right.
We're different, but we could be stubborn, all those Leo qualities if you're into astrology and stuff. But that helped, right?
Right.
But we never really did the work on ourselves, right? So when that happened, I did the work on myself. And I was like, oh, I understand, right? And I'm like, all right, well, this is what I need, right? And I just like kind of dove into it, right? And you have to realize, like, just because you've done the work doesn't mean your partner has done the work, or your friend has done the work. So you have to also be mindful of that.
Yeah.
That helped me, but it also kind of added some ripples in our relationship, right?
Yeah.
And it was for my wife that took the courage to be like, you know what, I'm gonna find you know, a personal therapist, right? And when she found a personal therapist, she was unable to unpack, right? And once we were both able to unpack like all the things, our upbringing, trauma, all these things in our life, it was like the floor was a level playing field.
Right.
And then us taking on relationship therapy, it just enhanced our relationship. So, you know, and the thing is, like, it's not gonna be perfect, right? I'd be lying to say like, like everything, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's always gonna be that we're people, right? We're individuals, right? And when you're in a relationship with somebody, there's gonna be missteps. You're not gonna see eye to eye. But I think having those tools allows you to feel the confidence that we can get through it. And I think whether that's personally or if that's, you know, relationshiply. Well, I mean, not relationshiply. That's not
I
really the word, but
in a relationship.
from a relationship standpoint, you know that you can push through. You have the tools, right? It's just about utilizing those tools.
So you were talking about being in therapy and then, you know, seeing like making the changes for yourself, but then communicating that outwardly and then it's not really being received the way you think. Yeah, like I think what we don't.
It's always funny when I think about it now. I can laugh about it now, bro.
But in the moment you're probably like, yo, bro, I'm doing my work. Why you not, yo, come on, you know what I'm saying?
This is what I need.
Nah, I feel you. I feel you wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Like what I wanted to say in response to that is like, or just to add on to that is a lot of times what people don't realize when you're healing is that everybody's not healing at the same rate as you.
Exactly.
Everybody's probably not doing the same amount of work as you, right? And so it's very, very important as you heal to give grace to the people that are around you. And it's a very difficult thing to do as well, because it's not as easy as just saying, okay, cool, that person's not healing. All right, it is what it is. Like you have friends, family, loved ones that you really want to go on the journey with you. And sometimes they're just not there.
Right.
Like I remember some of my moments of like, when I was going through my healing journey, and I've said this before in a podcast, like I was hanging with some of my friends and I realized that it just wasn't conducive for my mental health to be around them as much as I used to be around them before I started going to therapy.
Yeah.
Because when I started going to therapy, I started realizing, oh, this guy's insecure. This guy's making jokes that make me feel bad about myself. And he doesn't stop regardless of what I say. This guy actually is jealous, right? And it comes out in certain things that I mentioned. And I feel like I have this kind of like what my therapist called it was like, you have an abusive relationship with your friends. You get what I'm saying? And so I had to like get to a point where I was able to just say, you know what? These are still my mans. I'm gonna give them grace and we're gonna hang out, but just not as much as we hang out right now because it just does not make sense for me in the mental state that I'm in, man. Like, and so I think that's very important for people to realize. Like, just because you heal doesn't mean that people are healing with you.
For sure.
Like, that's not how that works at all. Unfortunately, like we would hope for everybody to heal with us, but that's just not how it works. And then the second thing I wanted to mention is, I do webinars a lot of times, and I'll, at the end of the webinar, we'll talk about how you get connected with a Black mental health professional. And I always will have at least one guy that's in a relationship. He's trying to make his relationship work. He's trying to figure out, should I do individual therapy or should I do couples therapy? And what I always tell him, and I'm glad that you did it, you do both, but you start with the individual. Right. And the reason why you start with the individual therapy is because there's things that you need to work on for yourself.
100%.
Right. And once you start realizing those things that you needed to work on, you become more self-aware of those things. It helps you to show up differently in your relationship.
100%.
So even if your partner is not doing that individual therapy, you're sometimes able to pull them along just by way of you doing the work on yourself.
For sure.
Not saying that it should stay that way because that's not how it should be. But we all know how relationships are. There's going to be points and times in your relationship where you have to do 80% of the work somebody else is doing 20. Right. And then once they start to get to a place where they're able to prioritize their healing, you guys are back to 50-50. Then you can start to go into, all right, let's do relationship therapy. Let's actually do that couples thing, because I find what ends up happening is if you're just doing the individual therapy and then you guys go and do the couples therapy thing and that person hasn't done any healing work, you'll find that maybe you and your therapist are on the same page about something because you've done that work and they haven't done the work. And so now you guys are like trying to, you know, get them to understand some concepts that you've already understood. And it just becomes much more difficult. There's a lot more friction added. And then it feels like that partner may feel like, you know what, I don't even belong in this relationship because, or I don't want to do relationship therapy or couples therapy because I feel like every time I go in there, like they're just teaming up against me. Right. And so I feel like that dynamic, you avoid a lot of that when you have two partners that are like, okay, I'm gonna do my individual thing and then we'll get together and we'll do the couples thing.
For sure. I think you touched on a few things that really resonate. I think one, the grace thing, I think it's important, man. I think that is the biggest gem, right? Like you gotta give people who you believe care about you grace, right? And you know, when you're doing individual therapy, right, you have to give those folks grace. But also, if a person truly cares about you, I believe, they'll give you grace, right?
Right.
Because what would happen was I'd go in these individual therapy sessions, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I need this, right? And it's a process, right? So you're like, okay, this is what I need, right? But then you realize as you start going through this process, well, because I need these things, this is going to affect my relationship in a certain way. So this might be making my partner feel a certain way because I can't communicate what I need or whatever the case is. So you have to trust the process. And you also, again, going back to grace, is you just have to know that it's going to take time.
Right.
And one of the biggest gems I think I learned and we learned in our relationship was that with grace, you're essentially saying that somebody who really cares about you is not leading with ill intent. You know what I'm saying? Because like people make mistakes. Like we're human, right?
Yeah.
But it's a difference between thinking like, okay, as a man, right? I'm leaving the toilet seat up on purpose, right? Like that's ill intent, right? Like because then it becomes like to your partner, like, oh, he just doesn't want to listen to me, right?
Yeah.
And there's a difference between saying, oh, well, he's got a lot going on and he left the toilet seat. Not saying that was, but that's an example, right? You know what I'm saying? So it's understanding that if you understand that if you truly feel like this person cares for you, you have to give him the benefit of the doubt. And I think that it creates a space where people can feel vulnerable and safe and move forward.
You know? Nah, I love that, bro, because it reminds me of what happened when I was in couples therapy with Naima, my girl. One of the things that our therapist used to tell us is assume positive intent.
Yes.
And it sounds great.
Yeah.
But in practice, it's a lot practice. It's a lot harder, right? And we would end up having some conversations and then, you know, Naima may mention something or I may mention something and we'll realize as we're having a conversation that we're not assuming positive intent from the other person, right? I'm upset at Naima because she did something and I'm assuming that the intention was ill, right? Or maybe I didn't even think about what the intention was. And because I didn't assume positive intent, like I have this negative view of the situation, right? And so that assume positive intent, that's a gem. I really hope people take something away with that.
For sure.
And the other thing I wanted to talk to you about is like you just mentioned grace and how you had needs and that sometimes because you had those needs, like they impacted the way you showed up in your relationship or they impacted some part of your relationship. If you don't mind, bro, do you have some tangible examples of like ways in which, how are you guys implementing strategies right now to make sure that you're in a healthy space with your relationship? What are some of the things that you guys do?
I'll say, here's an example. Our communication styles are different.
Okay.
Right. Like I grew up in a household where we are very vocal. Okay. And I say this, it's funny because it's like my family, like we can say how we feel to each other and it might be passionate, but then like 5 minutes later we'll go get ice cream or go get some food, right? My wife is more internalized with her thoughts, right? So understanding that, like, so there's a one, right? Like, so for me, like sometimes I want to talk through things, right? Whereas she wants to process things, right? And understanding those differences, right? At first, you might think that they're intentionally not trying to hear you on both sides, right? But for us, going through that process of therapy, it allowed us to understand that we need to create a level playing ground, right? So it's about a give and take, right? So we create a floor. And again, it's not always perfect.
It's not.
And at the end of the day, like, we're both very strong personalities. But the thing is, we love each other, right? And I think because that leads our relationship, I think it gets us in uncomfortable spaces so that we can grow, right? If my wife didn't love and care about me, right? Like I feel like maybe that effort to do personal work or try to see where I'm coming from. Might have not worked, and vice versa, right? So yeah.
How do you guys maintain that? Like, how are you maintaining a healthy relationship? What are some, do you guys have any practices that you have? Like any things that you guys do on a regular that helps you to maintain like healthy communication or whatever the case may be in your relationship?
Yeah, I think so here's the gift and the curse, right? I think when you start unpacking, you kind of heal from things or you find, something that works for you, you kind of get comfortable, right? So initially you might start off like, okay, every week we're going to have a conversation about an open floor, vulnerable floor that we're going to talk about, something that might have bothered us or how we're feeling, tapping in, right? And then that goes so well, you kind of just like get comfortable, right? And then after time, sometimes you don't realize you start losing some of those tools, right? So I think one of the things that we've learned is that, the tools that we've created, we utilize. And when we get to a point where they're not working, that's when, at least for our relationship, that's when we go back to professional help to kind of sharpen those tools, right? Because they get dull after a while, right? So it's just constantly being willing to work towards a goal, and then also having awareness of like, okay, we kind of fell off the wagon. Let's get back on it. Yeah.
Right.
So that, yeah.
You know what I always love asking men that have been in a relationship for a while that are married is, how did you know your wife was the one? Was there a moment? Was it just like a combination of moments, or just some character traits? Like, what made you say, you know what, this is the woman that I need to marry, that I want to spend the rest of my life with?
We just felt like friends. Like we're the type of people that like we literally, it could just be us and we could just be cracking jokes, maybe even like roasting each other, like and just have a good time, man. And like I feel like that's important. Like we truly have fun, and also I felt like I never had to belittle myself.
Explain that.
I think, in relationships, right? Especially when you start off in a relationship, you want to, all right, you might like basketball a lot, right? But let's say your wife or your partner likes football. So you might, instead of maybe watching basketball, you might watch football, right? Just to accommodate your partner, right? So then you start kind of changing yourself a little bit, right? And I never really felt like my wife ever did that. Like I could be as silly as I wanted to. I can go hang out with my friends. She welcomes that, right? And the things that we did have in common really worked, right? The things that we had different, like she loves to read books. Like, that's not something I would do. I'd rather go out with the homies and have a couple of drinks or whatever and chill, right? But it works for us. And it's never like, oh, well, you need to come do this for me, right? So I think that's when I realized, as our relationship grew, I realized I could be my true self, and that friendship was like the main piece there. And I think that is truly the best part about it.
I love that, man. I'm gonna clip that up for your wife so that you can,
for sure. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. She'll be like, oh, this guy talking about our problems.
Like, I have to bring you back around.
Bring it back around.
I got you, bro. I know what I'm doing. Nah, that's a joke. That's very funny.
For sure, bro.
Yo, all right. So the second question I love to ask, bro. You've been married for 8 years, bro.
Yeah.
What do you think about marriage now versus what you thought about it when you first got married? And then also, how do you sustain a marriage for 8 years and beyond? Like, what are some of the things that you feel like you definitely need to sustain it as a black man?
We don't, like, I think as a community, we don't really talk about what makes a marriage work. Like, what a marriage is, too. Like, and it takes work, right? Like, and people don't talk about it because I think sometimes we don't want to share our business, right? Like, I think culturally, sometimes we don't open up to folks because, oh, they might judge me, that type of thing, right? So understanding that it takes work, right? Like anything, if you want to, like with your car, right, you got to give it an oil change. You got to change the tires, and you got to do all these things, because if you don't, eventually something's gonna break, right? And even some of the things that you might not want to do, like when you go to a mechanic and they're like, well, you really need to get your transmission fluid, you know. Well, I don't really want to, but right? But long term, that might actually cause your car to break down. So I look at it like that in a relationship. You know, always being willing to maintain it and work towards it, and the grace piece, and then also understanding like it's not always going to be roses, right?
Right.
And, you know, I think relationships strengthen when you do have conflict, right? Because it's an opportunity to grow. And in that growth, I think is what really creates that armor to like get through some of the tough parts. So, yeah.
Let's talk about conflict, bro. Like, how do you guys navigate that in the relationship? Because obviously that's going to be something that comes up. And I feel like that's one of the areas that a lot of people struggle with, especially us as men, because sometimes we either, like you mentioned before, want to talk about it right away, or we're super avoidant and we don't want to talk about it ever. So what are some of the things that you guys have done to like navigate conflict a little bit better in your relationship? Is there anything that you find has worked really well for you, or like things that haven't worked well? Like, what does that look like?
The grace piece, and then knowing like rules of engagement.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like understanding that as long as we stay in this circle, we have the tools to work through it, right? When you start stepping out, that's when stuff
So what's the rules of engagement like for y'all?
You know, for me, again, I come from a passionate speaking family, right?
Okay.
You know, just monitoring like how I'm delivering something, right? You know, like for me, if I'm talking passionately, then I know that that's going to push my wife away, right? So it's understanding that, right? Also, like no assumptions, right?
Right.
So saying like, well, you know, this is how this made me feel, right? Was this your intent? Giving them the opportunity to say that, right? And also speaking in, this is how this made me feel, right?
Instead of you did this.
Bro, that's clutch.
Yeah.
Because I even know, like, if my wife says, oh, you did this? I'm like, what? Then the passenger, and then we're like, you know what?
Yeah.
And then if all else fails, all right, this is not working, let's take a time out. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then stepping away.
Yeah.
And again, like, that's not always going to be perfect.
Right.
And then when you realize, and being able to realize, I need help. We're going through something, let's go get professional help.
Right.
Push us through.
Right. Nah, I love that, bro.
All right, I'm interrupting this podcast episode to let you guys know to leave a review on the podcast. Please, if you are listening to this episode and you're finding value in this episode, you're enjoying the conversation, or you've enjoyed a previous episode or conversation, and it's safe to operate your phone right now, please leave us a review. Your review is a free and easy way to support us, and it helps us reach more people like you. We're on a mission to build a stronger, more connected Black community, starting with Black men. And you can help us on that mission by taking a minute out of your day to leave a review. Your review helps us generate more listeners, which in turn generates more revenue, allowing us to expand the platform even further. So please take a few seconds out of your day. I know you're busy. I understand. I know you're doing a lot, but it will help us greatly if you would just take a few seconds out of your day to leave a review right now. Did you leave a review yet? All right, let's get back to the episode.
I love that bar on how to talk about what's bothering you instead of saying somebody did something.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes that you will get you in trouble.
What? 100%.
For real.
Right.
Because nobody wants to hear you did this to me. Right. Even if that is what happened, right? You want to give them an opportunity to like see how it impacted you versus saying like, you did this. It puts people in a really defensive mode. I read a book. I don't know if you've ever read it before. Probably not, because you say you don't really like reading books like that.
You can't read.
I'm messing with you. But nah, I don't even read books like that. But I just happen to read this book. This is probably like, out of the books that I've read that I can count on my hand, this is one of them. Okay. Right? Like, and the book is called How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Okay. I'll just check it out.
Yeah, it's a good book about like how to navigate relationships, whether it be with coworkers, people, family, whatever, right? Like, how do you talk to people in a way where you get them to understand you, you understand them, and you're able to get what you need without it being manipulation. Yeah. You get what I'm saying? And so, like, in that book, one of the things that they mention is the same thing that you just talked about, is instead of the you, using the I, right? You don't want to start conversations with you. Another thing that they mentioned, right, is compliment, request, and then like compliment, right? So like, if you need to give somebody like negative feedback or like feedback, right? There's a way in which you can do it where it doesn't come off like, yo, they're just attacking me. 100%. So instead of me saying like to my girl, right, I'll use her as an example. Instead of me saying like, I didn't like the way you talked at me during the conversation, like that was crazy. What I could say is, babe, you know, you've been doing a really good job with communication, but just the last time I felt this type of way about some of the things that were said. And then follow up with what you were saying, which is, was that your intention, right? Because that's how it made me feel. Right. Now we give it a clear opportunity to be like, nah, babe. And we're going in a whole different direction versus, I can't believe you did that the other day. Well, no, that's not even what I meant.
It's crazy how that changes.
Just language, bro. 100%. Just language will get you out of a lot. Like, it will help you with so many arguments. Changing those from arguments to just conversation where you guys are both able to go back and forth and understand each other's perspective is really important. You mentioned another gem about just not making assumptions, bro. Yeah. Oh my gosh, bro. I can't tell you how many times I've been in an argument with somebody, and then in the middle of the argument or towards the end of the argument, I realized, bro, this whole argument was based off of an assumption. You know what I'm saying?
But you already down.
You know, we're already down. Right. Oh my gosh, man. But this is all based off of an assumption. Now, like, because I didn't do the work to like understand what was actually happening in the beginning, because I didn't do the work to clarify my assumption, we went down a path that we shouldn't even have went down in the first place. Yeah. You feel me? Yeah, bro. So I'm glad you mentioned that, bro. It's a lot of marriage game, bro. For real, man.
For sure. It takes, you gotta be willing to do it. Yeah. And as you learn the work, then you realize that it's good work. You know what I'm saying?
Nah, absolutely, bro. I want to tap in a little bit more into your healing journey, bro. Yeah. And what Blackman Hike has been for you. Why do you feel like going on hikes has been so instrumental for you? Like, and why do you feel like that's something that we should be prioritizing as Black men?
Because nature is really a place where you can unplug from society. It allows you, and this is particularly going into nature with a group of folks. Okay. Like, for example, Black men, right? People I identify with, right? Right. Because you can pull away from society and just be a Black man, right? Your labels, your titles, all those things don't have to exist, right? Right. And it created a space where we can just be us. Like, we can crack jokes, we could just listen to nature together or talk about different and I bring up this point. One of the reasons I've been able to be so vulnerable and talk about my mental health struggles and just my process was because as I was in these spaces and we talked about these type of things, because all the barriers and all these titles and stuff were lifted up, I realized I wasn't the only one going through it. Yeah. You know, and for me, that inspired me. And that at first, it was very uncomfortable. I still remember, shout out to my VP, Cuddy, right? Tyrone. Yeah. Because he was the first one to really push me to speak vocally about my process. And it's gotten easier over time. But the hope is that I inspire somebody to speak about it. Because I think if you talk about it and realize that you're not alone, you don't become ashamed of it, and you're more willing to work on it.
Right.
And ask for advice.
Right.
So,
No, absolutely. And that's the premise that we lead the platform with. It's called leading with vulnerability, bro.
Yeah.
So what I always do is I share my story.
Yeah.
Right. And what that does is that creates a space where you can feel seen.
Yeah.
Now you know I've been through depression, being cheated on, anxiety,
Yeah.
whatever it is. And you're like, yo, bro, if I've been through that, I don't feel crazy anymore. Some black man is gonna listen to this episode and be like, yo, I've been through panic attacks. I'm not crazy. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, I don't actually have to be in the state that you were in after your panic attack where you feel like, yo, I'm gonna be one of those crazy people on the street.
For sure.
There's actually a route that I can take where this doesn't have to be my future.
For sure.
This doesn't have to be my reality.
For sure.
So that's why it's so important for us to have these conversations, bro. Like, it's really important for us to have these conversations, bro, because it just creates a space for us to feel seen.
Yeah.
And I think one of the dope things that you just mentioned that I didn't realize about the hikes is that it really does take you away from society.
Yeah.
Especially if you're doing the hikes in a place where there's not really a trail for like other folks to be in, and y'all just on some others, like, you know, that
sometimes,
and that I would love even more because like there's no way anybody's gonna be out here but us.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact I'm not gonna run into some of the things that I could potentially run into if we see other groups of people.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
For sure.
And so what I wanted to talk to you about is the last time I felt that way was in Ghana.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying?
Bro.
Yeah.
That was the first, yes.
That was the first time you felt that way?
Man.
Bro, when I went to Ghana, I truly felt, that was the first time I felt like a black, just a black man.
Yeah.
I'm not a black man who's a threat.
Yeah.
I'm not a black man that is ghetto because he's wearing a do-rag.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a black man that's uneducated.
Yep.
I'm not a black man that's trying to rob you.
Yep.
I'm just a black man.
Yeah.
That was the first time in my life that I literally walked outside of society and I felt no pressure to try and conform to what I think people's perceptions of me are.
Right.
And I think we carry that weight so often
That's crazy.
that we don't realize how heavy it is until we don't have to carry it anymore, bro.
Man, we're such resilient people, and we've been through so much that, you know, sometimes we're comfortable in struggle, right? Like, and comfortable in these weights that are on our shoulder, right?
Right.
And until you have that awakening where you pull up and you realize like all these things that you mentioned and more, right? All these things shape how I feel, who I am in those other spaces.
Right.
You realize like I need to strive for that, like a place where I can feel safe, where I can just be, right?
Right.
And I think that was and that's so crazy. Because when we went to go see our family for the first time in Ghana, it was the same experience. I came home and I just looked at life differently.
Completely
100%
differently, bro.
And I would say that Blackman Hike has become that space
for you,
for me, and for other brothers who haven't had the opportunity to have that space, or just a constant reminder of what that can be.
Right.
And I think that's why we've been able to grow so organically over time.
Yeah,
like
it's
truly a space that, and it's almost like we gotta get you to come out. When you come on the West Coast, but you have to be there to experience it.
Yeah.
But it's real. Like we can be in a space and just be.
Yeah.
And I think when you're in a space where we can just be, we realize that we actually are very similar.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? In a lot of ways. And I think that's really how you build community and confidence.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like who you are, and then self-identity, all that type of stuff, man. For sure.
It's very hard to build that confidence in yourself and know who you are, be confident in articulating who you are, and standing on who you are when you don't have a space to even speak to who you actually are.
Right.
And what I mean by that is like a lot of times, because we're in this society that we're in and we have all these labels put on us, we're always consuming what everybody else says we are supposed to be. We never get a chance to say, no, this is actually who I am. This is who I want to show up as.
Right.
And so that's why it's important for us to have these spaces where we're able to just do that self-reflection or have those conversations where we're able to say, you know what? Nah, I actually don't want to be that guy that society's labeling me as. I don't want to, like, that's not who I want to show up as.
Sure.
I actually want to show up as Kizzle, who talks about Black men's mental health, who cares about those type of things. Or I want to show up as Jelani, who talks about Blackman Hike and talks about holistic wellness and prioritizing that and prioritizing time to yourself. Like, but if you don't get to actually speak to who you are and you're always consuming the messaging that's being given to you, you'll never understand. You'll never know who you are, bro. You'll never know. And that's why I really encourage a lot of Black men to spend time in self-reflection, whether it's with a group of men, right, where you're able to hear different perspectives and then kind of see and piece things together for yourself, or by yourself.
For sure.
Because for me, that was one of the most transformational times in my life, is when I actually was able to just sit down and say, yo, who do you want to be? And then what do I need to do to get to where I want to be, right? Because I was able to say, okay, this is who I want to be. This is where I want to be. Let me reverse engineer what I need to be doing to get there. And I think oftentimes if we don't have that, if we just don't have that space, we don't have that time, we don't prioritize it, it just becomes, I'll do whatever I see everybody else doing, or whatever I see society saying is possible for me.
Bro,
and you're not even actualizing the potential that you have for yourself, because you haven't really sat down to understand what your potential, your purpose actually is.
Man,
you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, you like hitting it right on the nail, bro.
Yeah,
like,
bro.
For sure. Like, I mean, it's a fight, man. Like, it's a fight for us to exist, to be honest, right? And we're so busy fighting that we don't really get to see, like, what are we fighting for, who we are, like, all those things that you said. So being able to create those spaces, or be able to have that space, whether it's individually or collectively, it really can change your life, man. Just how you view life and how you view yourself and your self-worth, man. I think for Blackman Hike, like, nature did that to me. And I was fortunate enough for my wife to push me to get out into nature, right? And however, because at least in America, like, outdoor space is not very diverse, right? When you talk about numbers, when you're talking about like national park visits, we're less than, like, I think it's like 10%.
That's exactly why I said I hope sometimes you guys go on trails that's not actually like, because I already know what they probably look like.
Right.
Yeah.
But that can be a deterrent for folks, right? That could use that as a tool for whole wellness, right? But being able to create that space and just feel comfortable, it's almost like a bubble, bro. Like, because sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, like, there's times where we go on trails and people are like, it's the middle of September, and they're like, yo, is this Black History Month event? Like, or like, you know, some people are like truly inquisitive about it, but some people are like kind of like disturbed by it, right?
Right.
And if you don't have that space or that bubble, it's like almost like a force field.
Right.
You so like,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. And that's the importance, because then you're able to create your confidence. So that when you do run into those situations by yourself, or when it's a small group of friends, you're not even worried about it, man. A lot of times we focus on that, but if you get to a point where you're not even worried about that, and you just worried on uplifting yourself and your community, a lot of the hate doesn't even resonate. Doesn't penetrate. You know?
Nah, I like that, bro. I like that. It's about getting that's a good word, bro. I was just actually having that conversation with some folks during a panel. We were talking about how there was one of the Black men that was just talking about his upbringing, and how, you know, his upbringing wasn't similar to everybody else's. And sometimes he feels differently, and like he can't relate to certain things. And I was just telling him, bro, like, you got to get comfortable with how, like, what happened when you were growing up. Just understanding that your process and like the things you went through is different, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I'm saying? Like, because oftentimes, like, we will see differences, you know, between ourselves, and then we'll use that to try and say, like, okay, you know what? I don't belong here. And I think what you're saying is like, no, don't see that as a problem. Actually see that as like, that's okay. It's cool. Just be comfortable with that.
100%.
And understand that wholeheartedly and stand on that. And I think that's a big thing, bro. Like, because I know there's going to be some people that listen to this episode and they're going to be like, man, I ain't going on a damn hike.
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm saying? This man crazy, bro. I'm the only black dude on the hike.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, ain't no way I'm going on a hike. But what you're saying is like, nah, bro, pull up with some of your friends or do a dolo, but just whatever it is, like, don't allow other people's perceptions and like just their viewpoints to penetrate what it is that you're trying to do.
100%
for yourself, bro.
You know, some folks come out because they're avid outdoors people, right? They love hiking. They like, you know, mountaineering. They're, you know, whatever, camping. Like we do camping as well. They just love being outdoors. Some folks just come because they're looking for a community.
Right.
And I feel like whatever it is, if it's calling to you, see what it's about, man. Because there's brothers that grew up in LA. You know, I'm talking about brothers 40, 50, first time hiking. Like LA is probably one of the most beautiful or diverse places, like plenty of trails to hike, beach, stuff like that. Because it's not common, sometimes folks don't even feel like they have the right to go into the trails or the right to go to a beach and stuff like that. So I say that to say, if those brothers didn't have the courage, and I say this a lot when we do our kickoff. I appreciate the brothers who just found out about this because it takes a lot of courage to come out here. You don't know what to expect. You don't know if you're going to end up coming back home or whatever, but something in your heart told you to come. And honestly, it's changed folks' lives. So, it's, we got to sometimes be courageous. I think is the biggest thing.
That not even sometimes. I think all the time. When it comes to our healing as black men, our healing looks so much different, bro.
For sure.
Our healing looks so much different, and so there is a lot of courage that has to, like, there's a lot of work that happens before the actual work happens. There's a lot of like mental work of like, damn, okay, you know what? I do have these things I need to work on. I do have a problem with this thing. I do realize that I need to make changes here. And this is a solution for me. And I should invest my time in doing it. There's a lot of mental work that has to happen for a black man to show up at a wellness event, at a retreat, at a hike, in a safe haven, right? Like to start therapy, right? So I say something similar when we have new safe haven members. When I do the orientation with them, I tell them like, yo, bro, I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
Because it takes a lot to get to this point.
Man.
And I actually say courage too. It takes a lot of courage to get to a point where you're like, as a black man, you know what? I'm actually going to work on these things because I see it as something that will be beneficial for myself and my family. And I know that this is the thing for me. It does take a lot, bro. I'm glad you mentioned that because I think oftentimes we tell black men so much, you gotta heal, you gotta heal, you gotta heal. But we don't talk about the other side of that, which is like, you do have to find the strength and the courage to say, you know what, this is the route that I need to take in my life.
Right.
Because it's so much easier to just say, you know what, I'm good, bro.
Yeah.
I think I'm all right.
Yeah.
I'm fine. You know what I'm saying? I've been doing this my whole life. You know what I'm saying? Life ain't that bad.
And then you end up on the floor.
Right. Exactly.
Bruh.
In situations like yours, where you're basically going through a panic attack because you haven't had a space to be able to process. You know what I'm saying? So, damn, bro, like, man, I'm just realizing like how important these spaces are. And I think every so often I have a conversation where I'm like, man, like this has really made me realize like, okay, like, of course I know how important the work we do is, but it just makes me realize the purpose, man. It really makes me realize the purpose, man. So I want to talk about that, about purpose. Because one of the things we were talking about is like earlier is just how if you're getting so many different viewpoints and perspectives, if you're consuming that so much, it can be hard to determine who you are as a man. Why do you feel like it's important for us to understand our purpose as men?
When you have your purpose, you exude a sense of confidence and self-awareness, self-worth. And I think it's also contagious too, in a sense, like if you're comfortable with who you are and you find that purpose and you work to it, it's something that it does to your soul, bro. And something that does to your just whole being that I think is important, right? Like, because I know some cats back home, right? They're like, I'm not about to get into nature. Like, I'm not about to go hiking with you.
Yeah.
And, you know, if it was something I wasn't serious about, they would probably roast me for a little bit, right?
Right.
But I think the fact that I feel like I found my purpose in Blackman Hike, and I feel like when I talk about it, when I walk, like it's in my aura, that they realize, oh, like he's for real serious about it, right?
Yeah.
And that actually has gotten some cats to be like, you know what?
Let me pull up.
Yeah, let me pull up, right? Or just a mutual respect for it. Like,
right.
I respect that. It's not my lane, but I respect that, right?
Yeah.
And I think when people respect stuff, then it's a higher probability that they might explore it too.
So identifying your purpose just gives you, as a man, that confidence, but it also impacts the people around you, is what I'm hearing.
For sure. It's like a testimony almost, like
absolutely
living testimony.
I agree wholeheartedly with that, bro. Because there's a study that says like men that identify and know their purpose are less likely to experience depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
So just off of understanding your purpose as a man, you are less likely to be depressed and anxious, right? Which is very telling in itself. It says a lot that in itself will reduce the rate of depression and anxiety. It shows that we are looking for that. We do need that, right? We do need that like mental compass that tells us like, okay, cool. This is aligned with my purpose. This is the route to go. Or this isn't aligned with my purpose. I shouldn't be doing that. And I think what happens with men that don't have their purpose is they're not able to make a decision that's in line with where they want to go because they don't really even know where they want to go. Then it impacts every other aspect of their lives. Because if we're talking about relationships and we're talking about heterosexual relationships, I don't know any sane woman that's getting in a relationship with a man that does not know his purpose and have a vision. It's hard to have a vision when you have no purpose. I can't give you a vision to where I'm going when I don't even know what the purpose of my life is.
Exactly.
Where am I going?
Man.
Right? And the way in which I always tell men to find their purpose is to find and prioritize God in their lives. And I know people don't like that answer. It's not the sexiest answer in the world, right? But the reason why I say that is because I only tell people what I've done. When I was in college and I didn't know my purpose and I really didn't understand what it is I should be doing on earth, I had to spend time in prayer. I spent a lot of time in prayer, but I also spent a lot of time in self-reflection. Just being like, yo, you know what, bro? Same thing I told you earlier. What do I want to do? Who do I want to be? Where do I want to be? How do I reverse engineer where I am right now to where it is that I want to be? Right? And it's just consistently asking myself that question, consistently trying new things, praying about it, asking for discernment, asking for clarity, asking for wisdom, so I can be able to understand, is this for me? What is it that I should be feeling? God, are you speaking to me, right? And once I was able to start to see and get those answers and comprehend, I was able to really understand like, okay, you know what? I feel the best when I'm helping people. I feel the best when I'm talking to people about this thing, when I'm educating people about this thing. Maybe my purpose on earth is to educate, to help, to inspire, right? Then, okay, how do I do that? What is the vessel for me to do that? So then I started a Kizzle brand. So I would go out to different schools. I would do workshops, all these different kind of things. I was in my season of preparation. And from there, Express Yourself Black Man. Now, because I started a Kizzle brand, I have all these different learnings. I'm able to take that into Express Yourself Black Man. But none of that work, none of that happens if I don't sit down and just say to myself, what do I want to do? Where do I want to be? How do I reverse engineer myself from where I am right now to get to where I want to be? And I think
that's real.
Oftentimes, bro, what's happening for a lot of us as Black men is we are running through life. It's like, yo, I start school, then I go to high school, then college, and I'm in college. I got to pick my major. I don't really even know what my major I'm going to pick. I got to just get my 9 to 5 after that. I just got to get this bread. And then before you know it, you in a 9 to 5. You don't even really like your job. You don't know why you in that job. You don't want to scale up in that job at all. You feel like it's a dead-end job, even though some people may say, oh, it's great. You really don't like it at all, right? And you're now depressed.
Man.
You get what I'm saying?
You hitting it right on.
I'm telling you, bro.
You right on target.
I'm telling you, bro, because it happens for so many of us. I see it so often.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get to the man that's like in the middle of that right now.
Yeah.
And tell him like, yo, bro, before you get too deep in this.
Bruh, right there.
Before you get too deep in the matrix, brother, take some time.
Bro.
Take some time. They don't want you to do that though. They want you to
honestly,
they want you to just push
it's
through.
It's a rat race, man. It's a it's
I'm telling you.
Gerbil wheel. Bro, you hit that like right on target, man. I think understand our purpose. Like not what society tells us, right? A lot of times we think our purpose is just to get money, like all these things, right?
Right.
And to your point, a lot of times it's emptiness there. You don't know where you're going. And if you're not hitting those marks, you're not making enough money, you feel less worth, all these type of things. And for me, I know you talked about you found your purpose, like it sounds like through church, right?
Yeah, not even necessarily
not church, but
through church, prayer with God, and then also self-reflection. Yeah.
So for me, nature brought me closer to a higher power, God, right? And that truly gave me purpose. And for me, again, coming from African background, right?
Yeah.
You know, I'm supposed to be on Black Enterprise, right?
Oh, for sure.
For being, in my mind, the best businessman, right? And that works for some people, and that's some people's purpose, right? So I'm not knocking that, right? But it took a lot of courage for me to like, and also a lot of, and I gotta shout out my wife, a lot of like support from her, right? Like through the tough times, right? To kind of push in my purpose. And it's like, I could potentially still be on Black Enterprise, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And, but as Blackman Hike.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And truly living in my purpose, bro.
Yeah.
And it took me time to realize like, I love my community, right? I love like brotherhood. I think, that's having spaces that we can converse and bounce ideas off of us is how we move forward.
Right.
I love like nature now. Like, you know what I'm saying? So all these things I love, like I feel a sense of being, right?
Right.
And those other superficial things like money and things, those are important, right? But those things will come, like if they're meant to come, right? But and they can still come from these platforms, right? That we're doing. But just finding your purpose, man, I think is important because especially today's society, man, the purpose of Black men sometimes when it's shown through media, music, etc., is just like provider, like indestructible, all these things that it's truly not true, right?
Yeah, it's not.
Just not looking at that purpose and following that dream, but also just like digging into yourself and finding an opportunity to find closer relationship with a higher being and reflection, I think is
super important, bro. What I'm seeing, there's a common thread between our journeys, and I always say like there's patterns that you can see when you're talking to people that have been successful in in some way, shape, or form. I used to watch a lot of like interviews from like the Will Smiths of the world, the people that are really doing things, and I'm like, I really would love to get to that point at some point in my life. And what I would always notice when I would watch those interviews is that they would praise God.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But then they'll always talk about this unwavering belief that they had in themselves and the things that they were doing.
Yeah.
And what I've realized, throughout my life is that there is just so much noise.
Yeah.
That if you're not careful, you will get consumed in it. Because as soon as you walk outside, someone is ready to tell you who you are.
Yeah.
And if you don't know who you are, you will believe them.
Bro.
You get what I'm saying?
Especially as a Black man.
Especially as a Black man, especially in the United States of America.
Yes.
And so it's so important. The common thread that I noticed between us two is there was solitude.
Yep.
There was like silence almost, where you were able to just do some type of reflection and get in tune with God
For
or
sure.
higher power, whatever it is, right? And that helped to get you to a point where you were able to receive and get that information. And what I try to tell Black men is like, bro, you have to spend times. There's gonna be a season in your life where you have to be alone.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to be alone, and you're gonna have to do that self-reflection.
Yep.
Now, do you want to do that at the end of your life? When you're like, damn, I wish I had done this in the middle? You know what I'm saying? Or earlier?
Shoulda,
Or do you want to do it earlier so that you can be able to plan your life out to the point where when you get to your end of life, you be like, yo, I left it all on the table.
Right.
I'm good with everything.
For sure.
You get what I'm saying? I feel like God allows us to choose, because we have free will.
Yep.
He allows us to choose when we want to experience these periods in our lives.
Yep.
Right? Season of winning, season of preparation, all these different kind of things.
Yeah.
And oftentimes what ends up happening for us is because we're so engulfed in the noise, we settle for instant gratification. We don't care about setting things up in a way that's going to be sustainable long term. We don't want that delayed gratification. We want everything right now.
Yeah.
We don't care about identifying our purpose. All we care about is get into the bag, get into the bag, get into the bag, not realizing that, yes, you're going to have a season of winning, but what will end up happening is that season of winning will come crashing down. And you're going to experience your season of solitude, and you're going to have to be alone, and you're going to have to do that self-reflection regardless because you didn't set things up the right way.
That's real.
In the start. And that's a principle that I live by. It's like you get to choose when you're going to have that season. If you choose to do it early, you can set up your season of winning for a very long time. But if you choose to enjoy your season of winning super early, you want to party in college all day, you don't care about what you're doing, you want to scam, you want to do illegal things to get bread, you don't care about setting things up to make it sustainable, God will allow you to do that.
Yeah.
Because it's like, all right, cool, you're going to get the season.
Yeah.
You have free will, but you still going to have to experience the other season. And now you set up that other season to be for a very long time.
For sure.
Because it's easier to rectify things when you're younger versus being older and having to go through things, especially as a man.
Yeah.
You've seen it all the time, right?
As you get older, there's more and more
responsibility. But I just think about how we perceive things as human beings, bro.
Yeah.
I'm going to be very honest with you.
Yeah.
If I'm out on the street and I see a grown man that's like 45 years old asking for money versus a 16-year-old, who do you think I'm more likely to give the money to?
Probably the 16-year-old.
Right? So if I see somebody that's 45 years old, not saying that there's anything wrong with being in that position, I'm just saying, like, just from a psychological standpoint, we already look at that man differently than we would look at a 16, 17, 18-year-old. Because in our eyes, like, all right, 16, 17, 18, you're still processing, right? You're still able to, like, make those mistakes and have those decisions that you're like, I got to come back from that.
Yeah,
but at
you
40,
still have room to grow, man.
Like, exactly. At 45, you're like, bruh.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? No judgment, but it's also judgment. It's like, like, how did we end up here?
Yeah.
Right? And I think a lot of that is due to not setting things up properly in the earlier years of men's lives, bro. And again, I want to caveat that by saying there's nothing wrong with either of those, 16 or 45. I'm just using it as an example for people to understand.
I want to add something too. Like, we've been blessed and fortunate enough to have that enlightenment, right?
Mm-hmm.
We talk about it because we're moving in that path, right?
Right.
But it takes a lot of courage, especially when you put so many eggs in a basket, whether you 30 or whether you 40 or 50, right? It's still never too late.
No, absolutely.
But it's better to be the person to go towards your purpose than to let life and show you what you missed in your purpose, right? So I want to just clarify that, like, we've been there, but I know it sounds like for both of us, it took a lot to get there, right? Like, for me, like, I'm still working through it, right? I know my purpose, but now I'm like, all right, well, because you waited so late in life, right? Like, to find your purpose, and maybe it was meant to find my purpose at this time. Now you have to juggle, your 9 to 5 and run a nonprofit and all these things, right? But I still feel fulfilled because I understand, like, at the end of the day, this nonprofit right here, and the impact I want to make for Black men and holistically our community is gonna make everything worth worth it.
Nah,
You know what I'm
absolutely,
saying?
bro.
If I would have found that maybe at, to your point, at 16,
Yeah.
maybe life wouldn't be so tough right
Right,
now,
right,
right?
right.
But it's never too late, man. When you do find your purpose, there'll be moments where no matter how hard you work and maybe the trials and tribulations you have, like it's just that feeling inside that it feels good. Like you just keep pushing, bro. So
I love that,
yeah,
bro.
it's courageous to do it. And it's not easy,
real.
but you can do it though.
No, for real. I love that. And thank you for adding that, bro, because again, like I don't want anybody to think, like I'm saying, like if you're 45, 55, whatever the case may be, you can't go out and do it.
Yeah.
I'm just acknowledging the simple fact that it is more difficult than doing it at 25, doing it at 20, 15, 16,
Oh, I know
age.
it. Right.
You know what I'm saying? Right.
I got a mortgage to pay. I got, why, you know what I'm saying? Like I've just been blessed that, my wife, like my partner, she is been so supportive. And this is how she has always, it was funny, like we would have conversations. I'm like, well, I just want to have money so I can do the things I love, right? So I'm gonna, get to the bag, right? Where, my wife was like, look, it's about purpose. I can't do anything that I don't feel purpose or feel fulfilled from. And we would have debates about this all the time. And now being in a place where I have purpose or feel like I have purpose and I'm moving in that purpose, I see what she's talking about. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes you need somebody, a friend, a spouse, a girlfriend, a partner, whatever the case is, to be like, to give you a different perspective.
Nah, for sure, bro.
And stick with that perspective because it took a while. And now I see. So,
I love that, bro. Yeah. Man, this has been a dope conversation, bro, for real.
Sure.
I wanna end with you just giving some game, some wisdom to any Black man right now that may be struggling with identifying his purpose, that may be struggling with his mental health, whatever whatever comes to you. What is it that you want to say to him, the Black man that's looking for some encouragement along his journey right now?
Man, the first thing I'll say is you're not alone. Yeah, you're not alone. You'll be surprised, even the people at the top, the people that we idolize, the people that might be your favorite basketball player, your musician, scientist, whatever the case is. We're all going through this. And the more we talk about it, the more comfortable we will as a society, as a community, to get help. Right? And it's nothing like being in a place of healing and understanding like where your life is going to go because of that healing, right? It can be tough and it takes a lot of courage. But I would say, if something feels off, just be courageous. Use that feeling to be courageous to at least try to improve your mental or physical or social well-being. You gotta be courageous, man. And I promise you, and he could say the same thing, right? It's worth it.
It is.
For sure.
It is definitely worth it, bro. With that being said, Jelani, can you please tell the people where they can find you?
Yeah.
How they can tap in, anything that you got coming up, all that good stuff, bro.
For sure. You can definitely find us on Instagram, Blackman Hike LA. We're also on Facebook. We have a website. We're a 501c3. We obviously need funding, so I'm just gonna say it. A lot of times we're in these nonprofit spaces and we're healing our community, but we don't have the funding to take it to the next level. So we have a website, www.blackmanhike.org. We have a donate button.
Hit that button.
For sure. Just to kind of give you some programming, we have 2 camping trips a year that are like retreats for brothers to get into nature. We have a monthly hike the first Saturday for safe space for Black men. We have a whole wellness program that we're working on with Kizzle and Safe Haven.
Yep, we're going to get some men into Safe Haven for sure.
We provide therapy sessions for a select few Black men within our community. We have a youth program where we're taking young men through the ages 11 to 18 in the LA area for underserved communities, trying to get them out into nature and use that as an outlet for their mental, physical, and social well-being. And honestly, man, my vision for Blackman Hike, 5 years from now, is that it's like the Boy Scouts or the Boys and Girls Club. I want this to be in many cities and in many countries as possible. In order to do that, we need the funding so we can get there.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Jelani, bro, appreciate you being here, bro.
Definitely, man.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. If you are planning an event or you are part of your organization's Black employee group and you are interested in having dope Black mental health professionals or myself come in and do a speaking engagement or a workshop or a keynote address or a panel, please click the link in our bio on Instagram or TikTok, scroll down and click book us for speaking and brand deals and fill out the form available on our website. Once you fill out the form, one of our team members will get back to you about how we can collaborate and create something dope for your organization. This is an unparalleled opportunity. We are currently the largest Black men's mental health platform, and we have a few slots available for our calendar year, and we would love to partner with you to create something dope for your organization if it makes sense for both parties, right? So go to the link in our bio, scroll down, click book us for speaking and brand deals, and fill out that form. If you're not on Instagram, the link should be linked in our description of this episode. And it is also on our website. If you go to expressyourselfblackman.com/speaking-brand-deals. That's expressyourselfblackman.com/speaking-brand-deals. If you are looking for a therapist, a Black therapist, and you've had a hard time finding one, you've jumped from therapist to therapist, or you just don't know how to find a therapist, we are teaching a free webinar. It's completely free, taking you from not knowing how to find a therapist, not knowing where to search for therapists, struggling with finding good therapists for you, not knowing what to look for in therapists, teaching you all of those different things, and also giving you the opportunity at the end of the webinar to be connected with one of our safe haven healers who are Black mental health professionals so that you do not have to go through the struggles of finding a Black therapist alone anymore, right? So if you're interested in that, you want to get connected with a Black mental health professional at the end of the webinar, or you just want to learn how to find a Black therapist by yourself, you can sign up for the free webinar. It's linked in our bio on Instagram and TikTok. You just click that free webinar link once you click the link in our bio and fill out the form. You can also find it on our website at expressyourselfblackman.com/links and fill out the form there for our next webinar session. If you're not interested in any of that, right, but you know someone that may be interested in it, all we ask is that you please share it. If you want some of the merch that we show on the platform all the time, that we're wearing on the platform all the time, you can shop it at shop.expressyourselfblackman.com. And once again, we just want to say thank you so much for watching this episode. Thank you so much for supporting us. Please, if you are on YouTube, leave a like, subscribe, comment. If you're listening to this on an audio platform, please leave a review. It helps us out greatly. Thank you so much for your support. We're wishing you nothing but the best and sending you and your family and your loved ones love and light. Peace.